Eli, you were very right in mentioning anti-Semitism, because I think that the hatred to Israel is also the new form of anti-Semitism. And we know that anti-Zionism is also the new dress. You remember the definition of an anti-Semite. It's someone who hates the Jews more than necessary. Eli, some of your friends mentioned the fact that it was difficult for an artist to come to Israel. There were a lot of pressure.
Because of the lobby against Israel. Yes, but you know, that's what we say before. There's a lot of groups everywhere in Europe mainly and everywhere in the world who are fighting hardly against Israel. Now, what are the solutions? That's what we have to think about. I think first is what we have in mind, what we can do. I think we can, if we take the problem seriously, we have to, I don't know, to bring together 100 of our best people here to think about the solution.
That's what we did.
Yes, but
several times.
Yes, but day by day, every year. And when we find an idea, go for this idea. And I'm sorry, Maurice, but you know,
I agree.
I think,
the problem is to convince the Israelis that they should speak by one voice.
Exactly.
The day you are convincing the Israelis that they can't speak with one single voice, now that you are Israeli, you will be listened to.
I will speak.
So
Nobody speak around me. No, but I agree. Every time I hear a declaration of some Israeli responsible, I have a problem because I know that it's not into group. Anyway, we have to think about that. There's two ways. We have to use our intelligence and also maybe our humor, because we have to find the way, but little by little, to demonstrate that everything who comes against us is false, is not right. And this is a job, a full-time job. It's not only, let's do a panel, let's think about it, so okay, we find some idea, let's go bye-bye. We must have people working all the year long to find solution, and have people also in different countries, like, I don't know, like Publicis have a lot of agency around the world. We must have that kind of people. We need lobby everywhere. We need to explain what we are doing. We need to change the image. We need to show the face of the young people here, of what they want, of the taste they have for peace and for freedom and for all the good things that we can imagine. And not only speaking about the war, about the problem with the Palestinians, you know, we have to use, these guys are really bright and they know every figures. I'm trying to speak with my emotion, what I'm feeling. My feeling is that we have to with our intelligence, to find the way of the heart of people. And that's the most difficult things to do.
Alexander, don't you think that the fact of coming to Israel is a way to convince people that Israel is not what they think without knowing the state of Israel?
Absolutely. It's very important to exchange both ways, by the way, to come to Europe and for Europeans to come here. In that respect, it is quite important that Israel makes up its mind also in their publication to the outside world what country it is, because some people say from a foreign policy point of view, which I understand, that Israel is a country constantly under threat, which is true, of course. And other people, more tourism business-minded, say, no, we have the best beaches in the region. This is a perfect place for startups. There's a young, new, fanatic generation. And so come to Israel. So which one is it, if you know what I mean? Of course, it's a balanced approach. But what you see in any political campaign we do or other campaign we do, you have to have one focused, coherent message, a signal you send out to the world. If you don't, people say, okay, so they say this, but they say that on the other hand. Toby and I just had a discussion. They say one thing and they say the other thing. So I don't know which of two is right, but one thing I know for sure, can't be trusted completely. And that is a big problem to have. Also, like you mentioned earlier, if it goes on this origin labeling, it is not only that there is some anti-Semitic forces, which there will always be, I'm afraid. It's also about there's a deep, fundamental frustration within the European politicians about the peace process not moving forward. And people are looking for all the tools they can find to put pressure on Israel, because Israel is always being perceived as the bigger, the smarter, the wiser, David versus Goliath, if you like. So they're expecting more from Israel. I'm not saying that it's right. It's just what is the perception. So in the general public, the perception is that Israel holds the key to the solution. And so far, it hasn't moved. Now, again, that's not right or wrong. It is the public perception. So I fully agree with what I said before, is that if Israel shows its true intent, the country it is, a country it aspires to be, all the optimism, because, I mean, there's a lot of in Israel to be optimistic about, and combine that with a sort of self-esteem and self-evident steps, concrete steps that show that Israel is the country it aspires to be and is willing to take the peace process seriously and be the wisest of the two, if you like, that would open up the sentiment there is now, and that would open up the relations immediately. Because I can assure you, if that happens, immediately as a sign of good faith, because the EU is always looking for balance, they would retract legislation like this immediately, because they want to show good faith. The only question is always which one came first, chicken or egg, whatever you like, that Israel has to show it is serious and has to start working on a very positive, self-evident, almost optimistic mission versus the EU. And then you take away all the arguments that are used now, mostly false, by the way, but are used against Israel. Because you not only show them wrong, but you prove them wrong by your actions as well. And that will take Israel further.
Toby?
Yeah, I want to pick up on a couple of points that I've heard. One is, I think Eddie is right to raise the issue of anti-Semitism. It is somewhere in the mix. I think sometimes it's the element that's hard to quantify, which makes it sometimes difficult to analyze. When does challenges to Israel and Zionism become anti-Semitism, and where is the border? It's something that we've tried to address at BICOM. We have a quarterly journal called Fathom, and we've published a series of essays trying to get into this issue of the relationship between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and trying to highlight for people to understand where the relationship between those two phenomena, how they interact, and what's going on there. But I want to pick up on a couple of other issues relating to the issue of Israel's communications, in terms of political communications. I think we all recognize, and everybody involved in communications, whether it's any kind of communications, and certainly in political communications, that the unity and clarity of the message is key. You have to have a clear and unified message if you want that message to get through. And Maurice has mentioned, and I think quite rightly, that Israel has a problem in coming to a unified message and needs to find a way to overcome that. I think it's worth also highlighting, of course, that there's a structural problem underlying that in terms of Israeli politics and the way Israeli governments are formed. In the UK, we have something called collective cabinet responsibility, where if you have a policy agreed by a government, even a coalition government, everybody has to stand by the policy. And if you're a minister and you don't like the policy, you either keep quiet or you resign, basically. In Israel, there is no such phenomenon. And we have a coalition of several parties, and they don't agree. So the Prime Minister can say as many times as he wants that I'm for a two-state solution, and I believe it's in Israel's interests. But then you have a foreign minister stands up at the UN and says there won't be peace for 30 years, or a deputy defense minister writes a column in an American newspaper saying we should renounce the Oslo Accords. And people out there don't understand what we understand, which is there's an internal Israeli dynamic going on here, and these people don't represent one another's views. But out there, that nuance is lost. And what they hear is a cacophony of conflicting messages which simply undermine the credibility of what Israel is trying to communicate, or should be trying to communicate.
This is called democracy.
This is cacophonia.
The other challenge that I wanted to highlight relates also to this issue of diverse voices and the credibility of Israel's message. And that is saying one thing but doing something else which appears to contradict that message. And of course, we haven't mentioned it yet, but we cannot ignore it. One of the biggest single challenges here is the issue of settlements. When the perception out there, whatever the reality here and whatever one's opinions about whether it's right to build here, there, or wherever, the perception in Europe is that when Israel announces new settlement construction, that this is undermining Israel's credibility and its good faith in a peace process, particularly if it's announcing construction in areas that Israel cannot realistically expect to keep, or in the most sensitive and contested areas where it's not clear where they will end up in a final status agreement. So, Israel's argument that the new settlement construction shouldn't affect peace talks, it's not a successful argument in Europe. It's not a winning argument. The fact is that it is seen as behavior which undermines the credibility of the message that Israel is serious about the peace process. So we have, on the one hand, voices within the government that conflict one another and a lack of understanding outside about the way the way politics works in Israel, and on the other hand, behavior which seems to contradict words, and those issues together undermine the credibility of Israeli messengers, however effective and good communicators they may be.
That's what in Europe, that's what they call, on the Foreign Affairs Council and amongst diplomats, it's called the Israeli facts on the ground strategy. So the perception there is that Israel builds as much settlements as they can until they are forced to negotiate with the Palestinians. And then they say, yeah, but this is already built. We can't move these people away. So if it's true or not, but that's the perception. So when it comes to the settlement issue, that's the way Europe looks at it. So every settlement is another, they almost think that Israel wants to build as much settlements as humanly possible until somebody forces them to stop. And then they would say, yeah, but this is already, now Israeli territory. And again, so I agree with you. That is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yes, but there is still double standard. There are countries like Turkey, which invaded part of Cyprus, Morocco, who occupies some territories of Mauritania or Algiers, I don't know exactly. Nobody is asking for labeling products of these areas. There are conflicts all over the world. The specificity of this country is that Israel is always the accused, rightly or wrongly, in many cases wrongly, and we have to face this problem to try to promote our arguments.
Yeah.
Maurice.